Thank you to the audience for waiting while we had a longer session in non-public. And let's begin by standing to salute the flag.
The flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Are there any changes to the consent agenda? Being none, we will head into our first session of public comments. Am I right? I am. I was guessing. Okay. Public comments time. Okay. Feel like our front row of audience should have popcorn. All right, we are ready for the superintendent's report.
Okay, we'll get started in just a second. I'm just waiting for an email to come my way.
Yeah. While we do this, I would like to have a consent agenda change to remove the stipend list from the consent agenda. Can somebody make a motion for that, please?
I make a motion to remove it.
Thank you, Judy. A second?
Second.
Thank you, John. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
All right. So the 2024-25 school year has concluded. And I think we ended the year off very well. Those of you, I think actually almost all of us were there at the graduation of this year's senior class. And what a wonderful group. If you were there the night prior to that for their awards ceremony, just the number of individuals who were New Hampshire scholars and what their involvement was and the number of scholarships given out, just a really great picture of the movement that we've been making as a district, but also just the fabulous individuals they are and the work that they're, which reflects the work that their families and the community has had with them as well. And I think as we consider the whole year, I mean, it was not one of our easier years. And it was not an easy year for, I would say, public education in general and the legislature. There are some updates from some things that we've been talking about. And so we do know that the universal voucher bill has gone through. And so that any individual, regardless of their income status, may apply for those and likely be awarded those. That is something to watch over the years to see what impact that has, both educationally speaking, but also financially within the state of New Hampshire. There may be some opportunities for us to take advantage of this. We have to discuss that more as a board. Certainly if we have a policy where if staff have kids who come to the school here because the board has allowed that, or they've talked to me, and I have a few people that I'm allowed to provide that to, and we have a lot of people asking to come here. If they're able to get that voucher, they're to apply for that and to give that to the school district, and that's roughly the amount of adequacy. The other bill that we were looking at that had to do with choice and with funding, whether it was receiving funds or distributing funds to another district, was the school choice bill that was out there, where there was language. I think there were actually several versions of this. That language was about having kids be able to, or families be able to choose whichever school that they wanted to send their children to, public school. That has not passed, so that will wait another year. If we have a similar legislature next year that we do this year, or expect to see that bill again, and to have a little more thought behind it and perhaps a better financial structural plan within it, rather than just saying, hey, make some policies and pay some, other schools a specific percentage of your per pupil. Might need to be a little firmer than that. Nonetheless, I think that it's reasonable to assume that that could take place in another year or two, and this school is positioned nicely to be able to market itself and to enter this, I would say, new era within this area anyway of what's happening in the legislature. It'll be interesting to see what happens over years, because of states that have done similar work and it has not panned out. But New Hampshire just might be a different makeup. And it could, who knows, maybe we have the right format for that. This also marks the change of an education commissioner in the state of New Hampshire. Frank Edelblue will be stepping down, and Caitlin Davis will be the new commissioner. Caitlin Davis has worked in the Department of Education for quite some time, actually all the years that Frank has been there and beforehand as well. So she's perhaps a different pick than what has traditionally been in the past. But she does know the Department of Education, knows the politics well, and has worked closely with most of the personnel groups that work with the Department of Education. So I've worked with her on some committees and talked to her about some other things relative to math and curriculum. And she's a grounded person, someone who does not, she would seemingly be a steady person in that position. Someone who will probably not have robust new agendas. But I think a person who will say, here's where we're at, let's do what we can to improve education in New Hampshire, and let's work together with what we have in the state of New Hampshire. Tough to tell what the movement will be entirely, but she's a good person from my interactions with her in the past. For us, as we end this year, we've had some meetings, just a few this year, and we've talked about money. And so this is just a very broad view. Obviously, the year hasn't finished, revenue hasn't come in completely, and we would expect some changes to take place. But let me just try to enlarge this so that people can see it. There we go. And this actually just changed about less than an hour ago, because we got some other news of revenue that had come in. So in general, we're kind of where we thought we would end up being, where we could be a little bit to the negative of what we thought, largely due to food service. And Carrie is here to correct me with anything and to also answer any questions in case you have some further ideas or concerns or questions about this. Basically, we're going to end the year being able to fund our reserve funds for the maintenance building and the special education. That's $450,000. And to be able to give the board the opportunity to retain close to 5% of the net. I think net assessment is what we're looking for of this, and so which is about $1,158,000 for this coming year. Now,
can I pause you for one
Yes.
second? I'm sorry. So on my screen, so I do recommend board that to see this clearer, that you go ahead and open up your Zoom and look at this so you can get the full view of it. But I will say the numbers are not clear for some reason. I don't know if it's simply taking it from the screen, but is there another way? Because there aren't any numbers that you can read online right now.
you can't read them on screen? You can. Yeah, that's difficult. We can always also, I don't know if you can print this for the board for them to take a look at? Would that be possible? Because there's a, yeah, right in there. In that office, yep, so we can get you a hard copy right there. So this document was about $50,000 in a different direction about an hour ago, and so but we got some more Medicaid revenue that had just come in, and we expect that some more Medicaid revenue and possibly another area of revenue could come in as well. So we think we'll be very close to breaking even to be able to carry over the 1 million, the 1.1 million. Might be a little bit less than that, might be around 1,058,000, but enough to do what we had set forward to talk about anyway, or have at the meeting in August when we have that public hearing. The food service, you can see that the balance, there's a negative fund balance that we would likely need to take out of our current general operating fund or operating budget. So that does, whereas we have without that, we're kind of hovering around that 16,000 after funding everything, $16,000 to the negative, which we believe once July comes, that will actually end up being a positive because of more revenue coming in. That being said, we still have to deal with the food service loss.
Can you just say something on that?
Yes, if you have a microphone, Gary could add to this.
So the document shows a loss of about 5,500. However, the actual loss to the program this year is running at about $87,000 to $88,000. So the only reason why it's showing only 5,500 is because we have a positive fund balance right now of 82,000. So we may need to fund more of the loss than the 5,500.
I'm hoping it'll go back up on the screen on Zoom. Right now, this is the Zoom. Can it go back to the thanks. Oh, I can read it.
Enlarged a little bit, yeah.
Good.
So in a nutshell, we still have to wait a little bit because there needs to be some end of the year payments, closing POs, things of that nature. We usually end up getting a few thousand back as a result of that. In a sense, not back, we have it, but it doesn't go out. And then also we tend to receive over the last several years, July, even just the mid-July, we've received more revenue. And so we've wanted to make sure that that gets attributed to this year's fund balance. But the board we're pretty confident, very confident that the board would be able to retain over $1 million if they so chose. And then that would be a discussion of what to do with, that on the public hearing, which we discussed earlier this year. And then also it makes certain that the maintenance and the special ed reserve funds are funded per the warrant articles.
That they don't have access to device.
Okay. Okay, I'll print it. For you. So what questions do you have of that or anything that's related to the end of the year and legislative work and also finances?
Is do we have a date to go forward with this discussion as a board? I know we were going back and forth with several possible dates for that August meeting.
I think August 4th is going to be the best one, the one that we originally set for. I think August 4th is what everybody said they can do, and that looks like it's the best one. I'm sorry, I tried.
And so you'll end up trying to zoom in Is that right?
I will.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I will zoom in.
And then I guess the follow-up question is, what work do we need to do to, let the community know that that meeting is gonna happen?
I haven't thought about that. I think I'd like to do a Facebook Live session prior to this meeting. And open it up to, showing these numbers, showing where we got to, and allow the community to chime in and just have a really open forum with that. I've seen that done. Monadnock did one with their budget, and over 100 people showed up and asked some really good questions. And it was an easier way than showing up in person. There was a little less fear. People felt freer to be able to talk. And it was all recorded, so people could share it afterwards. But I'm thinking that that might be a good option. So what do you guys think?
How can we do that?
By getting into Facebook and.
No, I mean, I understand the Facebook part of it, but I mean, wouldn't that be a meeting?
Well,
How would we,
it wouldn't be, no, it would be an information session.
we can do that?
Yeah, and so it wouldn't be the whole board.
Uh-huh.
If another board member wanted to do it with me, that'd be great. But, so it wouldn't be a whole board. It
Okay.
would be, as much information as we can share and know. If there was somebody, administratively available to answer questions that we might not know. But I mean, pretty much it's been black and white for a while. So, but I think that might be one way to give the community a way of asking some questions and see the transparency of it. But any thoughts on that?
Just was gonna ask Ruben, thank you for getting these printouts, but I like the idea. Are there issues with having a Facebook Live session to try to get this information out? Lisa was just proposing that. Do you have any concerns?
Facebook Live session to get this specific information out?
No, to discuss the hearing.
Discuss the hearing.
To discuss the hearing, there's a lot of questions. There's a lot of people who still say that we hoarded money and knew about the money for the athletics and we're just playing games, and just another way to be transparent. And it's a little less threatening to do it through Facebook Live. And I would run it. It would be a board run thing, not you, Ruben, but just a way to say, here's what the hearing's about. This is the history of where we've come to. This is what you can expect. This is where the money is going to most likely. So just pretty much what we've been saying, but this format is a pretty non-threatening way to do it. And it can be recorded, that it can be shared and people can see it afterwards.
So I don't have an issue with it. If it's a board led, it becomes a board meeting.
No, not a board meeting, an information session. It wouldn't be the whole board.
How many of the board members?
I've seen it with 2.
I
Yeah.
mean, that would be fine.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
that were.
I've seen it, meaning when Monadnock was before their deliberative session, they wanted to get the word about what we're, or not before the vote, and this is what our budget is. And so they did a Facebook Live, and it was attended by over 100 people who asked really, really good questions. And it was just a neat way for the community, in a very non-threatening way, to be able to share this. And again, because it was recorded, it could be put on the website, and then it was shared far more. So the information just got out there very well.
Yeah, there's nothing that would be a problem to,
Okay.
we're gonna have 4 members, as you know.
Mm-hmm.
If you have 4 or more, then you would have to post it.
Mhm.
But you'd want to advertise it anyway.
All right.
Yeah.
So what I'd like you guys to do is think about it. Think about if you'd want to be part of that, what things we'd want to have on it. And then at our next meeting, let's take a vote on the approval to do this and make that plan, okay?
Yeah, we would just have to make certain that people understood that that was not the public hearing,
Of course.
right?
Yep.
Because I know that's
Of course.
people are gonna be confused by that.
Good. So that was my idea, John. Are there other ideas about getting this out to the community?
I definitely think it would be helpful at, maybe one of our upcoming meetings to revisit, that subject. And we talked about it in late March. Since then, there's some things that have taken place, right? I don't think that our suggestions that we made in March are gonna play out exactly, like we had. I think it's similar, but there are probably some changes. So I think it would be important that we get aligned on maybe what some of those are. And I know Ruben, you may have some input on that as far as certain positions, which ones we actually contracted, right? Which ones maybe didn't. So I would feel comfortable, with any of that, as long as we had a chance to revisit, that topic as a board before that.
Good. So that can become the template for the Facebook Live as well. Good. All right. Cool. I would like to just say that, I'm terribly impressed, that 4 months after we hear these numbers and speculate that this is what we think we're going to have available, this is what we think we're going to be spending. Those are educated, those are educated guesses. They're not, those aren't thrown out in the air. That you guys are able to be this close is kind of extraordinary still. I mean, it's just the work you guys have put into this, is fantastic. This is wild that you could be this to the numbers. It's very, very well done. So thank you guys for that. Okay.
All right, good.
Onto the consent agenda then. We have manifest approval, we have payroll, we have the budget transfer. Can we open that up, please? All right, so this is within the special education funds. This is a transfer. So do we?
From the tuition private other schools line to specifically the tuition LEAs outside New Hampshire. Is it the same line? Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Couple of notes. I don't know if you wanted to say anything, Jen?
The long and short is that we get rate sheets, so out of district placements, Out of district placements will give us a rate sheet. This is how much tuition is. And this particular placement didn't, we were unaware that we needed to pay individually for all of the services, and services exceeded significantly what we had originally put into POs. So the good news is we have the money and other tuition lines. Just moved it.
Yeah. It's always a chess game. All right, and we have some nominations. Yay. Ashlyn Mackey, RMS grade 4 classroom teacher. Jacob Ledany, CMHS full-time night custodian. Thank you so much. Aubrey Hendrickson, RMS paraprofessional. And then we remove the stipend list. So do we have a motion to accept the consent agenda as amended?
So moved.
Thank you, John. Second? I'll second. Thank you, Christine. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Thank you. Passes 6-0-0. And I removed the stipend list so that I could recuse myself from this. So if you guys would please make a motion to approve the stipend list.
So moved.
Christine, could you be in charge of the vote, please? Since I recused myself?
Yep. We need a second.
Second.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? No? Anyone abstain? And that would be one person. Thank you. That passes.
I think because I recused myself, it's going to be 5-0-0. So
Oh,
not even an
5-0-0.
abstain, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So 5-0-0. So get that one.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay. Good. Thank you, guys. All right, we need an approval of the minutes from the previous meeting. June 2nd, I'm sorry.
I'll make a motion to approve the school board meeting minutes from June 2nd, 2025.
Thank you, Judy. And it looks like, John, you're the only one.
And then discussion.
Actually, I wanted to say that I was not at this meeting, but I did read the minutes and I apologize for not being here. I really was looking forward to your presentation, but the minutes were amazing. And I hope that the public takes the opportunity to look at these on occasion and answer questions, especially now that we have this new format, bringing some of these bigger topics into the school board meeting agenda. It allows for, I think, greater accessibility of very important information.
All right.
Yeah, good point.
Mhm.
And then just one comment on page 5 under action items. At least the copy I have says that Radcliffe spoke with Ali Batella, but I think it should be Ali Vitello.
Could you spell that for the,
Yes, it's Vitello.
okay. So do we have an approval of the minutes as amended?
So,
Okay, second?
sorry, actually,
I know, and
That was under 8 action items, right?
Yeah.
This one right there,
Yeah, page,
Ali, right there,
right,
okay. And you're saying it should be Vitello?
Vitello,
Yeah.
yes.
okay. So we have a motion and a second, all approved for the amended minutes?
I,
Aye. Any,
Abstain.
yeah, any no's? Nope, and 2 abstains? Yeah. Okay. So that passes 4-0. 4-0-2. Got it. 4-0-2. All right, on to action items. All right. First one is the acceptance of New Hampshire Innovation and Creativity Connection / Destination Imagination Program reimbursement for $5,050. Anyone want to speak to that?
Something that we usually get approved annually, or that we receive annually. And so we're just bringing it to the board to receive these funds.
Okay, is there a motion?
It's more or less a grant that we get.
Yeah.
To do this for Destination Imagination year.
Is there a motion to?
I'll make a motion to approve, to accept the funding from the New Hampshire Innovation and Creativity Connection for the Destination Imagination Program. $5,050.
Thank you, Chris. Is there a second? Thank you, Judy. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstain, vote passes 6-0. Next, we have the approval of the school board 2025-26 meeting calendar.
Need to change January to be 26.
All right, Judy, can you say that one more time loudly?
January doesn't change to 2026.
Okay,
Yeah, that's, other than that, it looks great.
thank you.
I think we wanted to do this year over again. Was the idea. We're hoping. No do over, sorry.
Of doers.
Okay.
All right, are we in agreement on August 4th for the public hearing? Let's finalize that.
Sure.
Okay,
We'll have it here.
I'm not sure. Where do you want to have it?
Says our meeting is gonna be here.
Well, I don't know if we want the lobby. I'm assuming here, but do we want the lobby or the cafeteria?
Yeah, let's, on that time frame, because I'd rather not go into the Pratt, because we'll have done the floor at that point in time. We're trying to, once the floors are done, keep people off of them till the beginning of the school year. We could use the cafeteria here. If we think it's gonna be a larger event.
Mhm. Okay. All right, so we'll take a motion to approve the calendar as amended.
And the amendments would be the location of 804.
Yep.
Being the Conant Middle High School cafeteria.
Yeah.
And then the other amendment is that we move on to next year.
Yes, 2026 is coming.
Okay.
Thank God.
I can't see, did Carrie say we're gonna be ready?
Well, we have this as possible public hearing. So
Okay.
Carrie, do you think that, what are your thoughts? If that was a question from Charlie? Or will we be ready?
I can't promise that we'll be ready, but we're going to do the best we can to be ready. It really depends on our ability to get invoices closed out for the year, and I've already reached out to all of the principals and department heads to ask them to get the invoices as soon as possible. So if we can get all of that closed out, then we should be okay. So we're gonna try really hard. Really good.
Is there let me put out there then, is there an issue with changing it to the 18th meeting instead? Is there a problem doing that? Could we do that? If that's a concern at all for you, Carrie, like that's the crux of what we're meeting about. So if there's a concern with that, can we change the hearing to the 18th?
We can set the hearing whenever we want. But the reason that we're having it in August is because that's the earliest Carrie said that she could reconcile the books and have an accurate number. So I'd rather err on the side of caution and make sure everything's okay. So I'm okay with the 18th.
Carrie, the 18th is a question. The reason why we were originally talking the 4th was because we had to name the use of the funds prior to spending them. Does that work for us?
Yes, so that's part of it. So prior to the expenditure, we have to hold a public hearing.
Yeah.
So as long as we're not,
So like we're hiring people that are starting on what date?
20-something,
I mean, athletics will start beforehand, so that's why I just didn't know how specific we need to be. Obviously, no one would be paid out during that time frame. Maybe.
right, so according to legal counsel previously, it was based on when the expenses were actually paid and not necessarily incurred.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we have not, obviously we would be, if people are working, we'll be responsible for paying them.
Yes,
Without our saying.
right. But
We have to-
earlier, at most, it would be a month. Yeah,
So that's-
but it wouldn't impact any teaching or new teacher positions or paraprofessional new hires. It would not impact that, I don't think, at this point in time.
Yeah,
Because they would start.
when do
the
they
following
report?
week.
Following week.
New
So
teachers.
there's a thought too,
Yep.
we change in just for the month of August, it's up to the board. The meetings to August 11th, and then the next one to the 25th.
No, we've tried multiple surveys. Yeah, we're sticking with the.
Yeah.
No.
So we need to do 25 and this 25 approved prior to
Yeah.
September 1st.
So let's go with the safest, which is the 18th. And we know that 2 board members can definitely be here for the 18th. So is that cool with people?
Well, I know I can't be. I planned my kind of vacations around what we decided, 2 months ago, being the 4th. So
Okay, but you won't be here for the August 18th that we had
nope,
approved to?
because when we discussed this in April, we said
Mhm.
August 4th. And that's where I made plans. So I definitely won't be able to be here for the
Yeah,
18th.
I think
And
we keep it the 4th and let's push for it.
Okay.
And that's
I will
just
not
me,
be
but
here
I think
for
that's what we've told the public too.
Yeah.
So to change it now, I wouldn't be for it. I'd rather be there.
All right, so let's keep it listed as
And if it has to
possible
move, it
public
has to move.
hearing. That way, if it's not ready, we'll be ready on the 18th. Okay. All right. So did we get a motion for the calendar As-
For the calendar.
as amended?
As
Thank you,
amended.
Judy. Second,
I'll second.
thank you, Chris. All in favor? Aye, opposed? Abstain? Okay. Motion passes 600. Next is school board committee meeting calendar approval. Let's take a look. All right. For policy committee, are we meeting this Thursday? Charlie and Chris? It's not listed on this calendar as the first Thursday. I'm okay not because of the sheer number of policies we have up for tonight. And we don't have any updates from the New Hampshire School Board Association at this point. So I'm okay keeping this calendar and not adding a July date.
I think that makes sense. Yeah.
Yep, Charlie, is that cool with you? We're technically supposed to be meeting this Thursday, July 4th,
Fourth.
but
July 4th.
July, whatever, June, whatever.
That's
What,
next.
I am on school vacation now,
Yeah.
haven't a clue.
This
All right.
Thursday, the following Thursday.
So,
That's- yeah.
26th, so June 26th, we're meeting. And then we don't have anything in July listed.
Why are you saying we're meeting on June 26th?
I'm saying, hang on, I'm putting my calendar up so I don't make this mistake again, which now it's fighting me.
First
Can't do
Thursday
it.
is July 3rd, right?
Yeah. All right. So are we, so we're not meeting this week. It was July 3rd, I was thinking. So July 3rd, we're not gonna meet. Is that okay with you, Charlie?
Chris says, yeah.
That's okay with me.
I know, but yeah, you said.
Charlie agrees.
Good.
Me and Charlie always agree.
Great. Okay. So we're keeping with the calendar. We will see each other on August for policy, August 7th. All right. Any other changes or? Okay. I'm just looking through. I'm not seeing anything listed here and I'd look for that for board for budget prep. We don't have a calendar yet for that, and I was hoping to have that by now. So does do we want to have a facilities committee meeting soon to help put together a calendar for
Finance committee.
budget, finance. So right now we have nothing on for finance. Thank you, Christine. Do we want to, like, what's the best way? We really need this calendar up. So what is the best way of facilitating that?
The calendar, Carrie comes up with calendar because the dates are prescribed by the state law. So she has to work according to the state calendar, and then she'll publish a calendar to us about when we have to have these things. And then we usually back into when we need to start based on when we need to be done.
I don't think we usually have that until like, yeah.
The Department of Revenue Administration.
Can we, hang on, Karen.
Department of Revenue Administration puts out the state budgeting calendar. It usually comes out sometime in August. So once I receive that, since certain dates, as Charlie stated, are prescribed by law, once that's released, then we build the budget development calendar, usually once that's come out.
That makes sense.
It does, but does that mean that we really won't have a budget development calendar at all for the hearing on August 4th, you think?
We never do.
Right, that's correct. Yeah.
I have another question while you have the microphone, Carrie, if you don't mind. I know that we were talking about the money that we have left over and we need to make those decisions. Is there a deadline as far as that's concerned? Because I know sometimes we elect to give some back to the taxpayers. Are there some tax related deadlines to that?
I don't know that there's tax-related deadlines. I'd have to consult legal to see about that. However, I do have to file it on the state DOE 25 report if we're retaining any money. So that is due September 1st.
Okay.
So typically that's why we make the decision prior to September 1st because it needs to go on that report.
Okay.
All right,
So do you need a motion on the, do we need a motion on the committee calendar?
yes. Yes, we do. Would you like to make
So I
that?
would make a motion to accept the committee calendar as presented.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Well, second,
Thank you, Christine. All in favor?
hi.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstain? Thank you. Passes 600. The last is the propane fixed price agreement. The last action item. Thank you, Ruben. All right. And I'll just read the last half of it. The district can lock in rates for fiscal years 25, 26, 26, 27, and 27, 28 at a rate of $1.44 per gallon each year. This past October through March, Bellevue rates fluctuated between 0.745 per gallon and 0.983 per gallon. Since the proposed rates meet the terms of the contract and to allow for budget development, I recommend executing this 3-year agreement. If the board chooses to lock in rates now, the board should authorize Superintendent Duncan to execute the 25 to 26 through 27 to 28 fixed price agreement for propane heating accounts with Girardelli at the rate of $1.44 per gallon for the 3-year period commencing July 1st, 2025 through June 30th, 2028. Any discussion? We'll take a motion.
I will make a motion to approve the propane fixed price agreement.
Okay, is there a second?
Second?
Thank you, John. Thank you, Christine. Any further discussion on this?
Obviously, with the world events as they are, locking in any petroleum prices at today's price is probably a really good idea. That's my statement.
All right,
Carrie, can I ask you a question? When we were discussing this and going back and forth and so forth, this is an improvement to what we've been budgeting, correct? Our rates, or am I not correct on that one?
We paid $1.44 per gallon this past year. The previous year it was $1.42 a gallon. The previous year before that, it was 1.729.
Yeah.
So the lowest it's been the past 5 years is $1.41 in 2021, 2022.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And so that puts out 3 years of keeping that within 3 cents of the lowest it's been in the past 5 to 6 years already.
It's matching the rate we paid this past year and basically extending it for 3 more years. Yes.
4 years of the same rate altogether.
right. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstains? Motion passes 600.
Nice, I'm sorry.
Nice question. Did the motion include authorizing?
It
Is it-
does,
Thank you.
yep, as written. Yep. So, number 10, So the policies before you, they are basically three separate categories. There is a policy summary document at the top that gives a quick, brief, and amazing, here is what each policy is about. And the first three policies, ACAC, now, let me see. All right, yep. First 3, 4, okay. So in February, the state reverted back to a previous Title IX language that had changed in August. And we updated our policies in August, but everything got very busy in February and March and April. And so now we are going back to revert back to some, and they also clarified some language in these policies. They asked that these policies be approved immediately and without a second reading. But there's a couple of pieces that I would like you guys to take a look at with admin. Most of these are not big changes. The changes are still under federal protection as you read them. But the one that had a specific change that I did want the district to watch for involved the timelines for, let me see, ADC, okay. Just want to double check. There is one of them that has timelines for reporting and when there's a, it's not grievance.
It's the grievance procedure. It's
Is it a
ACA.
grievance?
I believe it's ACA.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so in ACA, if we could open that exact policy up, the discrimination and harassment, it was grievance. Thank you, Chris. And if you scroll down, page 3, page 4, these are very, very long. Complainants, where's the days? I'm not seeing it in this one, Chris. Hang on. Nope, wasn't that one.
CAC.
So.
In,
So are you, it all depends what you're talking, a lot of these have timelines, but like, for instance, if you go to level 3 appeal, within 5 working days after receiving the level 2 decision. So there is a timeline, it's like a
it's not it.
level
no.
2 appeal within 5 working days after receiving the level 1 decision. And then if we go backwards, within 30 working days of receiving the complaint, the investigator will complete a written report that summarizes the investigation and makes determinations as to whether the facts indicate a violation of this policy.
Yes, so is it in the first policy?
It's in the first one on
Yeah.
page.
Yep, going
11
down
and
to page
12.
12. Yep. So policy ACAC, page 12. So we did change this. Currently, we have different numbers similar to the numbers. So yeah, go down to 12. So I just wanted to call attention to this one in particular because the first 2 numbers, we're almost there, folks. Okay, so A in okay, so the B and C are both by law have to be the 20 days. The other ones, they can change, like they can be altered a little bit. We in our current policy have this total of 80 days, but there's like 5 days here, 15 days here. This is what New Hampshire School Board Association recommended. So this is what we put in because it just seemed clean and clear. So this is one of the reasons why we thought, let's keep these for a first reading, make sure the admin can take a look, see that this is reasonable. And then we'll have this for a second approval at our next meeting. Okay? So sorry for the detail work there. Let me go back to the agenda. Okay, so the A policies that deal with the discrimination, the reason for those changes are all because of that Title IX reverting back. But then some other policies, and these are all mandatory policies. We have to have these policies, they're priority, not options. We also updated policy ADB and policy ADC, drug-free workplace and drug-free schools, and prohibitions regarding use and possession of tobacco products. Those are mandatory policies that New Hampshire School Board Association had updated language that we would like to adopt. And then the tobacco and alcohol and drug policy also asks you to remove policy JICG. It's a redundant policy. So we are asking to remove the bottom one and only keeping policy ADC. And then the last one, okay, any questions on the A policies that I just talked about?
So just for clarification, policy ADC gets put in, and in doing so, policy JICG is removed.
Yes, policy ADC is already there. The language needs to be updated.
Mhm.
And policy JICG removed.
Mhm.
Yeah. All right, so now for a small discussion. If you could please open up policy KFR. So over the past few weeks, we have been talking about the waiver for public use of buildings and how those, how useful the waivers are, what the need for them is. And so the policy committee went back and looked at the history of the memorandum of agreements. And the history is that 2 years ago, it was brought to our attention that we really had very little accountability for who was using the facilities and how they were being monitored as far as, are they putting too much use in, and is there too much depreciation of our facilities, and are we checking to see that people are paying? And we just needed, as a board, to have a better eye on their usage. So we changed the policy to change some of the user groups. And if you can scroll down, please, to where it describes the 1 through 5 user groups. On page 3. Okay. So we knew from our online system of registration, which we had 2 years ago, that the outside groups predominantly using our facilities were number 4, municipal and community services, specifically our rec departments, right, and our scouts. And so to get a better handle on the amount of usage, and if outside groups were contracting those situations, we just, as a board, wanted to really have an eye on this. And so we created the process of both asking them to pay and be part of the paid classification with number 5. Number 5, businesses for profits were always in the paid category. So we put the community services in that in the hopes that it would really be very transparent for us to see the amount of usage, so we could be responsible with our facilities. And then we put in place a process of having a waiver for those groups that would come before us, that we could see, oh yeah, they're getting a waiver for this basketball program for this time frame, or this karate or whatever. And then we also wanted a process of, if you didn't want to do a whole bunch of waivers for a season, you could do an memorandum of agreement. So that's that history. What we found going back through having these conversations we've had in the last few meetings, we asked Ruben to go through and see how much has been actually paid. in this 2-year time when we've had the waivers and we've had our online systems. And we found that in the last 10 years, there was one paid group. So what we've also found is that as far
We get $75.
what we also found out is, yes, there is depreciation of our facilities, but I've went back through board meetings and tried to remember, in the last 4 years that I've been here, there have been no egregious damages done. We've never had to sue for damages. We've never had to collect for major damages or graffiti or bad behavior. So our rec programs and our community programs are not misusing, they are definitely using our facilities to the max. They are not misusing our facilities. And we do have a lot of pieces in place in our current policy to protect us in the case that those things happened. People will be paying. They do have to sign contracts. They are checked for criminal record checks. You know, they are checked for which keys are used and when they're used. This policy is 6 pages and it really was pretty exhaustive. And so the policy committee looked at this and is asking the board to edit this policy so that groups 4 and 5 now will fall into so group 4 is taken out of the paid category completely. And the only pay category becomes 5, businesses for profits. And so this makes no waivers necessary. We can take that off the agendas. It would still involve an MOA with groups that would want like specific partnerships, like an after-school program or something partnership with Jaffrey or somebody, but there's still very much possibilities for MOAs for specific partnerships. But this would make it so that those municipal groups, the community service groups would simply go through their normal online registration system. It would be approved in-house. It would not come before the board. So I think I missed some language when I did this. Charlie, you would call the attention to it. Could you speak to further language changes that we wanted on this?
Yeah, I just wondered whether we had made a change. I'm on page 2, second paragraph. And it includes the second line starts out with students. And I think we discussed changing that to minorities. Minors, excuse me.
All right, page 2, you said?
Page
And I
2,
remember this
second
conversation. I'm
paragraph.
sorry I didn't do it.
Page 1.
I'm sorry? I got page 2 of 6.
So what you're saying is in accordance with district policy GBCD, all prospective users that will be at JRCSD facilities while being a minor?
Yes, while minors are present. Right now it says students are present, and I would thank you, Charlie. I'm sorry, I forgot that part of the conversation. So we wanted to protect all minors, not just our current students. This is up for, again, this is our first reading. So if that's something that needs consideration, that's worth coming back to us with for our second reading, okay?
I'm curious about, because we now have, students in our care with special needs who might be here until they're 22. So they're not minors. So students and minors, I'm not certain.
That's not bad.
Something along those lines to protect it.
Mhm. Okay.
But otherwise, I'm fine with this. I still would like to see how often our facilities are being used, though. I would like to get a report. I did go through one night and tally it up, and I wasn't even certain I had all the right dates, and I was really surprised, and I actually would like the towns to get a copy of that as well.
That'd be great. I think that we are gonna have a facilities, like, one of our information sessions for our board meetings. I think facilities is coming up. So let's have that when we have a,
I think you can generate reports from the system.
say it again.
You can generate report from the
You can
systems,
generate reports from the system.
So yeah, let's.
but now we don't have a facilities director, so that has to be assigned to someone.
We have someone who's learning the system.
You're not doing much, are you?
All right. Any further questions on KFR?
And Heather maybe.
Just,
Yeah.
She's working with.
I just have one comment that when we talk about businesses, any entity that is not a not-for-profit, a 501c3, is technically considered a for-profit. Yet some of these businesses are very small businesses. They're not even designed to create a profit, but just to, pay some staff a salary. And in many cases, those salaries might even be considerably lower than what people working for the rec department or the town is. You can be technically a for-profit, but running a yoga program, and you're paying yourself, I don't know, $20 an hour or something. And yes, you're technically for profit, but we should just keep this in mind as we go through this whole.
We didn't do away with the waiver. If there's a for-profit that comes in and really can't afford to pay because of their fee structure, then, I'm sure the board would, if they're a worthwhile cause, the board would offer a waiver. At least I would anyway.
Yeah, we've approved everyone so far, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty good track record.
Right.
If I could just add a little bit of, it has very, actually not to do with this, except that I just want us to consider keeping on our conversation along with that kind of logic that I think it's great to help the community out, especially people who are starting a business, struggling business, whatever, to do that and to help adults and so forth. We also have children who need to be fed here in our school district, and providing and finding ways and being as gracious and helpful to them, which also of course helps their families and parents as well. Is something that we should certainly have that same mentality for, if at all possible, whether it's finding grants, finding other avenues, looking at our budget, what have you. So, I'm all for compassionately helping and support the community in different ways, for profit, not for profit, but we have that same kind of situation here, people not having the means to do what they need to. And it's our kids, but it's also, from the same line of thinking, it's also helping their families. I remember after COVID, when we told parents that the lunches were going back, and watching all of their faces and their heads just kind of drop, because it was such an impactful thing for their families and for this community. So not totally in line with this, but kind of that same thought process. I think we recognize need that is out there.
Yeah, and I think pretty much when at least when I've evaluated these waivers, we've seen the benefit to the, most of them benefit our students and their families and result in that reduced fees. And I think we recognize that as a board, so.
Is your hesitation? I was just reading that sentence. So in accordance with district policy GBCD, all prospective users that'll be at the facilities, while students may be present, are required to pass a background investigation. So are voters prospective users?
Sorry,
Are voters? So look at the paragraph, look at the sentence. In accordance with our policy, all prospective users that will be at our facilities while students may be present are required to pass a background investigation are voters, prospective users,
But aren't the schools closed when voters are here?
which is why it says students. If we change it to
Oh.
minors, that means anytime a child is in the room. We can't do that because we can't ask voters for a criminal background check.
You're gonna have students in there.
But you want to change students to minors. Students means
Well, I'm
during
not hung up
school
on-
session.
I'm not hung up on the word. I just want to get the protection for the children. How we word that is,
And when we have this discussion, I think when we talk about prospective users, we're talking about the people that are applying for the thing, not everybody in the group, so that if, right, if the.
my concern
Cub
was the guy,
Scouts-
my concern was the person with the
Yeah,
fob. Okay,
that guy.
has a completely empty building and a bunch of kids. All right, and I want to make sure that that person, all right, has the proper credentials, including background check and so forth. Otherwise, I don't want to give him a fob and have him in charge of children in our facility. Or her, or whoever it is.
Right, but that sentence would, I think, is intended for the elections. When we had members of the public and people we can't criminal background check.
No, there was never, when that policy was written, there was never any discussion about children during elections. The only discussion about children during elections was the fact that we couldn't have children in RMS and protect them. Police department says it's impossible to keep people from roaming around RMS with the access that it has. You have to go through a foyer with the hallway, a ramp upstairs, direct access to the cafeteria, and all of those places could have children in them. So that's the issue that was brought up at that point in time.
I think this speaks to probably a very rare case where people are requesting use of our facilities during the day with students present and get it approved. I don't ever remember that happening, at least in the past few years.
I took it as, because I was trying to figure it out as well, because I see what you're saying, and I see, what I think I see you're saying, is that whether there are students here or not, on the weekends, if let's use the rec department, if the rec department has coaches that have fobs or coaching, they're going to be playing with their team, that they may not be our students, they could be people from another town, they could be 5 years old, 6 years old, but they're student aged kids, that individual who is overseeing them and is with them and is supervising them, that person is background check. We're ensuring that any child that's in this building is being supervised by someone who has passed a criminal check.
And in the rec department, backgrounds checks all their coaches anyways. So it really does go to that next level. It's not the person with the fob, it's all the coaches as well that are directly supervising.
But what about the homeschool science fair that was held here at RMS, right? That would be someone who should be, not because they're homeschooler, but whoever has that fob needs to go through the background because they'll be here with a group of kids. Right? Not our students, homeschool students.
I really like that language you just said, Ruben, student aged.
Yeah, that's what
I like that language rather than minors. That covers the older students, that gives the intent that it's all children. I like that language. Is that acceptable? Okay. So, all right, so. Wendy, do you want me to go ahead and make that change in there? Or, okay, I can do that.
So not to prolong it.
It's a good policy.
Student age,
Policy.
student age, are we thinking that, say, let's take our little Orioles, right? So let's say they're 1.5. Is that a student age?
Yeah. Mhm. We are
We
educating
we are
them.
considering, well, I'm just saying that, so a child who's 1.5 is student age. I'm not saying someone from our school, I'm saying in general.
Yeah, if someone wanted to come here on a weekend and run a mommy and me
Yeah.
class,
Yeah.
they would have to go through the background check.
I like it. Cool. Thank you guys for that conversation. I appreciate that. Any more discussion on those? Okay, they'll come back for a second reading.
I guess one related thing, and I know it's been dropped after a while, but as far as like the Ringe MOU, we don't necessarily need to discuss it tonight, but I think that I don't know, it's something that I'd like to get in place.
I agree.
How so? For what?
Well, I know it's been kicked around a bit, it was returned and you know, there was some language that was taken out and then we just haven't discussed it. I personally looked at is there still a plan to move forward with that?
No, this makes the MOUs moot. They don't have to have a waiver. They still have to go through the same
There's some things
system.
in the MOU though that are outside of this process, correct? Or are you saying that this?
No, they never were.
What about using the rec center in Ringe? Wasn't that part of the MOU?
All of the MOU, all the language is in the agreements they do automatically. The MOU is so they don't have to have a waiver for payment. So by not charging them, the waiver's moot. What I will do is after we vote for this, I'll go meet with the rec department heads and tell them, show them, bring a print of the
So there's
books.
nothing that the MOU does that this procedure doesn't do. There's no benefit to doing it anymore.
Nope.
There's not one thing about insurance or anything like that that's different.
All
Or
of
what
it.
about number of key fobs and things like that?
All of that's in the policy and in the FREBO
But I thought
application.
there were if I look at the draft MOU, there's specific languages as to the number of key fobs that we're gonna give the rec department and things like that that were agreed upon. There's specific language to each town as to what we're doing for them. Not on an individual basis, but as a group, they're getting special privileges that other groups don't because of the kind of repetitive nature of the closeness of our relationship. So I don't know. I believe that to be true, and if that's the case, I'd like to put those back on the table at some point and move forward with approving those, because I believe that there is, I'll cite that specifically, right? It's like they're gonna get 6 key fobs, or something like that. And there's other specific language that isn't covered by this policy. So
Yeah, I mean, there's some differences. I mean, I don't think that going through some of the differences tonight is probably the best way to go. I think there's always value in meeting and discussing and collaborating and trying to do that and to get into very specific means. This takes away some of the conversation around payment, right? So that's what this does. And then just makes everyone understand that in a broad category, if you're going to be here, you got to be fingerprinted and past, that situation. So, and then, like you said, there's a difference, like Jaffrey, for instance, our MOU is going to include the after-school programming, working with them because they have very specific types of programming and how to use our facilities and which facility they even are allowed to use. Like, they're not going to use this one for that purpose. So it can be more specific that way. MOUs are really to define a closer relationship. Like for instance, I have a JREA member here tonight, and we would work together with MOUs to agree upon how to move forward in a very typically a political or challenging situation for the betterment of moving forward.
Mhm.
So that's what an MOU does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's move on to the discussion of food service meal prices. Not gonna get easier tonight.
Yeah, we're gonna let Carrie talk all about this one. Because this is you know, I brought it up with the last one just because it was on the agenda tonight and just the concept of, yes, it's great that we're doing things for our community. It's great that they're helping them and yeah, we're incurring the cost for that. Yes, they're paying their taxes and so forth. You know, hopefully we have a great relationship going back and forth, that there's a give and take and ebb and flow. But in the spirit of doing what's right for our community and for community members who are especially those who are in need, and I would say our learners are in need, being minors. We owe them a greater duty. The conversation, I'm not saying let's pay for everything. I'm not saying that's the answer. I'm saying this is a tough conversation because we're talking about raising prices again. So you have the document there, and I have, and Carrie has the microphone. Would she be able to speak?
Of course, please.
So I tried to summarize as best I could what the board's options were. So each year, we have to look at the food service, student paid lunch meal prices, and meet paid lunch equity requirements because we accept federal funds. So if we don't meet the formula for the paid lunch equity weighted average price, then we have to increase the student paid lunch meal prices to get to that equity, but they don't require you to do it more than 10 cents per meal. However, if you only do 10 cents per meal, that just gets you further behind the next year, which is why we've generally increased our prices to meet the paid lunch equity weighted average price each year. So the state looks at the formula, looks at the numbers of student paid meals that were paid in the month of October. So we're looking back at October of 2024, seeing what the total meals were at which prices to get the weighted average price of all those meals from each of the schools. The target weighted average price is $4. We were at $3.85, which means we're 15 cents behind what our target, what the weighted average price needs to be. So we can either, or the board can choose to either increase it by 10 cents, which would get us to $3.95 for a weighted average price. So as I said, we would be behind the $4 requirement for next year. Or they could raise the lunch prices to meet the target of $4. However, if I'm using the same formula that was provided to me to meet that $4 equity, they take a 2% increase of the previous year's weighted average price and then tack on the CPI, which comes out to $4.03. So it would be a 6.03% increase for the following year. I hope I'm not losing anybody. I know I'm talking a lot here. So that would give us an estimated target next year for FY27 of $4.25 weighted average price we would have to meet. So what I did is I gave the board a 10-year history of what the meal prices have been, including breakfast and adult meals, which do not get calculated in this formula. They're only looking at the student paid lunches. And then the last page, I provided some different scenarios. And I have a spreadsheet here that I can plug in other numbers if anybody has something different that they want to see. But I tried to at least give you some different options of what it might look like and what those weighted average prices would equal, assuming the same number of meals are served next year. I think I missed one of the options, sorry. The board can also refrain from increasing meal prices for 1 year because according to the Consolidated Appropriations Act of 2025, it allows school districts with a positive or zero balance in their nonprofit food service account as of June 30th, 2024, to be exempt from the PLE requirement for the 25-26 school year. We had a positive food service balance at the end of June 30th, 2024, so we would qualify for this exemption. However, again, that would just put us further back the following year. But there is that option if you want to refrain from increasing prices for 1 year and wait to do it next year.
Carrie, can I ask a question? What happens to the profit that we make from adult meals? Where does that 50 cents a meal or whatever it is go?
It's part of the food service revenue.
It goes to knocking down.
Yeah.
Right. So right now, the food service costs overall exceed the revenue we're taking in. So the food service program is running at an operating loss. And that includes all revenue it receives.
And according to our numbers from earlier tonight, a loss of about
87,000.
87,000.
Correct.
Yes.
Yes.
It's a bit of a mess.
It is a bit of a mess.
How does that 87,000 compare to previous years? Let's say the last 3 years or 5 years? Because we had the pandemic years. So
Yeah, it's really hard to.
Um, last year, we funded $40,000. The previous year. We had, well, it's a little distorted because of COVID. So we had a fund balance that was quite high and we had to spend it down. So some of those years are really distorted because of it. So in fiscal
Can you go
year
back,
23.
though? I don't know if you have the data.
Yeah.
Can you go back to 2016, 2017, around
Yeah.
there? Because I believe that
Yeah,
when I was first here, the first 2-3 years, we were in the $50,000-$60,000 range. I could be wrong, but that's what I could have been a different district.
yeah. So back in fiscal year 2014, it was about 18,000. The next year, 21,500. Then the following year, it was even, it was flat.
Wow.
Following year was 24,000. Then 17,500. So it really hasn't been
Yeah.
significantly high until, I mean, we did have 1 year when Cafe Services that last year that it was quite high.
Maybe that's the one I'm thinking.
Yeah. But it's only because we had such a high profit in the food service account that we were able to do that, but they were running. Let me see if I can. About 110,000 for a loss they were running that year.
I'm sorry, what was the 110,000?
That was the loss from fiscal year 22-23 that Cafe Services was running. They had $110,000 loss to the program, but because of the positive fund balance we had from COVID, we were able to absorb that loss.
Well, it's not gonna help us much even if we raise the prices, cause it's overall, even if we raise them the highest, I think it's only a couple $1,000 extra profit. It's not gonna offset our loss, so symbolically, I think it's nicer not to raise them or raise them to like 4 even. But, you know, I mean, I'm looking at the difference of 26,990 and at the low end, and then at the high end, 29,305, so you're like $2,500 different, which for a whole program, that's kind of chump change, so.
For 7 of these years listed, the first 7, we barely touched any increase in lunch. In the last 2 years, we increased the elementary lunch by 50 cents and the middle high school lunch by 90 cents, just in the last 2 years.
I think the key element here is what is our target? Okay, because the government sets our target. And what happens is if we don't meet that target the following year, we've got a bigger target to hit. Just like right now, we're 15 cents under where we should be. All right, and if we need to meet 425 in FY27, then we need to adjust our prices to meet 425. Because if we don't, we're going to be farther and farther behind. The only thing that can help us is if the CPI number is less next year than what it is this year. Because that would drop the requirement that we would have.
He said the only thing that could help would be if the CPI number dropped next year. That would help, you know.
That would help, yes,
And
because
that-
I'm just estimating the following year based on the current year's CPI.
And the CPI number is basically the cost of food, right?
It's a consumer price index, yes, it's the number that they pull. Yep, yeah.
Yeah. Seafood is big one.
Right.
Yeah.
So they tack on 2% plus the CPI.
So what's done to us if we just don't raise it this year?
Well, so on the first page, they will require you to do a minimum of 10 cents unless you meet
Yeah,
the exemption criteria,
which we do.
which we do.
And we could meet the exemption criteria next year too, possibly,
Possibly, yes,
which would mean we could keep it level again.
yes. But it would continue to get you further behind, but yes, you can. It depends on whether or not they pass the Consolidation Act allowing the exemption again next year.
But then the amount that we would have to raise it would be 10 cents more. And I feel like that's been the way it is for the last 15 years. That 10 cent
Possibly.
requirement.
I'm not sure how that would work if you accept the PLE exemption, if it's a cumulative, 20 cents, or if it's 10 cents on the previous year, I'd have to ask.
Anybody have a direction they wish to go? Anybody have a direction?
So is what I'm hearing here, the real risk in, if any, I guess, of not raising it by something is that next year we'll need to raise it by more. It's kind of like with taxes, how you like to have a slope rather than like what we did this year and say, hey, we kept taxes flat and then have a big jump. But this is a different situation where I think we're talking about kids' meals. If it means lower prices next year, it's more money in people's pockets next year. And then, I don't know.
There's also a question of price elasticity.
Yeah.
So, I mean, how much do you raise the price? And what impact does it have on the number of meals?
Yeah. And I think this context is important too, that somebody else mentioned how much we've raised it just in the past few years. Right. So if we have a chance for an exemption, I think it's, something we consider. It's more money in people's pockets this year, which is always good.
Yeah, that's right, and as Ruben said, maybe it would even meet that exemption criteria again next year. We don't know that, but. I mean, I think there's a strong argument for not raising it since we have the ability to not raise it.
Yeah, and I think we've talked a lot right on this board about other groups not helping. We're not getting money like many other states in New England do. To me, this is our chance to do what we can do to kind of back up what we say we believe in, keeping those prices lower. I don't want to do something that's fiscally wildly irresponsible. I don't think that is. I think it would just mean maybe a higher jump next year, but we don't know. So to me, if there's a chance to keep it low for the next year, then we should seriously consider it at least.
And maybe this is.
Unless Carrie's saying there's some huge downside of that financially, which I don't think there is.
No, it's really what's coming out of the students or parents' pockets.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think keeping lunch prices flat, I don't know why we wouldn't do it.
There was a meeting last month at which one of the units, Jed Lockheed from the God Lunch, came and was talking about the God Lunch program, and I realize that's not directly connected to the price of lunches. However, I think that there is some interest in the community in seeing if we could do some fundraising to try and make up this difference. And maybe this is the time to put our money where our mouth is in terms of going to the community and pointing out that we've raised the prices 90 cents in the last 2 years. And we're concerned about raising it a bit more.
All right, Ruben, could you go up a page, please?
Mhm.
To the first page.
Just right on that way.
All right, so let's start with let's go through each and vote on them. The first one is utilize the PLE exemption and refrain from increasing meal prices for 1 year. Do we have a motion for that option?
From a discussion perspective, I'm also wondering, Carrie did a good job in providing some rates here, but when I look at the rates, the difference between middle high school and the elementary schools doesn't seem to be as large as I would hope it would be. Because first off, I believe that the middle schoolers and high schoolers eat more. And also from a affordability perspective, I would expect the high schoolers and middle schoolers to be able to afford more.
I don't know why they'd be able to afford more, but I'm sure they eat more.
Well,
Yeah, I'm not sure why they would be able to.
I guess you're thinking high schoolers could work and chip in, right?
well, I don't know how the families pay for their lunches.
Painfully.
Okay. Whether the kids participate with that or not, I don't know.
Mhm.
All right, is there a motion for number 1?
Number 1 is what?
Refrain from
To
increasing.
refrain from increasing meal prices to utilize the exemption this year.
Yeah, I'll make a motion to utilize the PLE exemption for this year and refrain from increasing prices.
I didn't hear that.
I'll make a motion to, for option number 1, to keep prices flat for this next year.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay,
And I just I have to put this out there. The risk to this is that the following year, there will be a bigger increase. From the agricultural perspective, with the current situation, it is difficult to imagine the price of food going down at all because the people who pick our food are not there. I would expect that we would all see food going up in price. So I just want to put that out there, that the risk is that the following year, it will be a significant increase.
Yeah, I recognize that, but I think if you're looking at like total money out of people's pockets,
Mhm.
it's less if we do it this way.
Last time we did this, we increased it because we did not want to fall behind. All right, and we fell behind anyway.
Yeah.
All right, we went down 15 cents and we thought we'd be even. So if we just sit there doing nothing, we're gonna have a significant, I mean, you want it to go up $1 next year, $1.25? That's what we're talking about. So
What do we? So are we talking about like the difference between going up $1.25 next year or $1.15? I
I
mean,
don't really think people notice like 15 cents. I mean, I just, I can't imagine that they do. I mean, it's just so, I think just make it an even $4 and hope it doesn't go up to $5 next year, but not raising it all. I don't think it makes sense because everybody knows that price of food has been going up and we accept that and like Christine said, with the situation with farmers and people that can harvest crops, it would probably be really expensive next year. So I think just going from $3.85 to $4 and I just think, I don't think anybody, I don't think that's really a hardship for anybody, but
I really would beg to differ on that. I'm glad that you can't imagine it. I really am.
yeah.
I'm glad that you can't.
Yeah.
But I do want to speak to that for a second. So to increase by 90 cents over the last 2 years was very traumatic for a lot of families. There were a lot of kids who did not get to eat full meals every week. And we tried to keep that balance because in keeping the breakfast, but it was brutal having that kind of an increase last year. To have an exemption opportunity this year, I think is something we cannot ignore. And right now, with this $3 million deficit, we are trying to nickel and dime and find all these places to fill gaps that were created. We are trying to get through this year. And I know that we need to be fiscally responsible for future years, but we're looking in the face of something that will immediately affect every student here positively. We can't speculate on next year. I know we want to plan for it, but we could have another 3 million taken out. Like, we don't know what next year is going to look like. We know that right now, because of fiscal responsibility, we have this exemption. And not all school districts are going to get that. I think that would be throwing something away, throwing an opportunity away. I hear that it's 1 year. I think that this would make a huge difference for a lot of families to have this stay the same. This is still an expensive meal.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So we have a lot to do tonight. Let's take a vote on number 1 and we'll go through the list should that fail. Okay? So we have a motion and a second. Let's all in favor?
I,
Aye.
But I'm gonna qualify it. I think this is a good thing to do, but when we're looking at things like stipends and stuff, maybe we can be a little more thrifty with those and see that we're putting our money towards something that's going to benefit the children more directly.
Right? And any opposed? Okay. Any abstain? Okay, the ayes have it for 5-1-0. Thank you, Carrie, for putting this together. The options are incredibly important for us to have and to see. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
All right. Student services positions?
All right, so I'll preface this conversation with, it's been many years since we've been fully staffed in student service positions. We are on the board aware of that because of individuals who have done multiple positions for a period of time. Because of that, we have given money back to taxpayers in big quantities. in the last year, it would have been, largely due to not being able to hire positions in these areas. So we are in a position again this year, as are many schools, to figure out how we're going to move forward and provide the services that we need to provide to our most vulnerable learners. And so I have the Director of Student Services, Dr. Jennifer Horn, here tonight to speak on this and to provide some information about where we're at and where the board may be able to assist.
We continue to have open positions as we go into the summertime. Our current open positions, we have an open intensive learning center teacher at the elementary school. We have an open K-1 elementary case manager position. We have an open high school case manager position. In years past, we've hoped and hoped and hoped throughout the summertime that we would fill those positions. And when they don't fill, then we juggle the administrative staff to fill those positions in a variety of creative ways that have taken a toll, frankly, over time and are not sustainable. And so before we go into this year with open positions, we will continue to hope to fill. We are recruiting, doing lots of different types of recruiting options and trying really hard to fill positions. But we also need to be open and realistic to the fact that some of these positions are really hard to fill. The ILC position, especially at the elementary level at Range Memorial School, is where we have our kiddos from kindergarten to grade 5 who have our most intensive cognitive needs. They often have, actually almost all of them, if not all of them, have a one-on-one all day long, meaning that they require an adult with them for their safety, for their communication, their daily living skills all day. On top of that, they also require really individualized curriculum instruction. So all of their reading, their writing, their math is individually provided by a teacher. So these positions require somebody to be dual certified. You need to have a special ed certification as well as an elementary ed certification. And what we've learned over the last 3 years is that we can't fill this position. Getting them filled and keeping them filled has been extraordinarily difficult. We were very creative this year, and we had one of the special ed administrators did one of the 2 positions, and one of our special ed teachers at Range Memorial School provided the services for the other position, as well as his typical grade spam. Also not sustainable. So at this point, we would ask that we look at that particular position or that set of 2 positions based on the intensity of need of students, the intensity of daily living skills, toileting, feeding, changing, curriculum and instruction, as well as the intensity of just teaching all skills, elopement, behavior, everything in this one little group of spaces that falls within the new category or the new information that's in the current JREA CBA as an area of critical need or critical shortage. I think it's critical need. Which allows the board to discuss providing additional financial support to try to fill these positions. So that would be my first discussion today, is that when we interview for these positions, people are often like, it's too much. This position is too much. There's too many requirements.
Can I interject and
Yes.
say, I mean, you've said it already that they require, well, most of these children require one-on-ones. So another thing that's unique to this specific role is the number of adults they have to mobilize.
And support and provide training for.
We don't have another.
And oversee and make
that
sure
does
that all of the pieces are being done. It's a heavy position. It's a lovely position. This is my wheelhouse. This is my favorite place to be. Is the growth and the development you see is amazing. But it's been hard to fill. The additional thing that I would like to discuss is talking about shifting around the staff that we do have to fill the positions that I've just discussed. And the way that we would envision that is right now we have case managers in each position, in positions across the district based on grade bands. And we would be increasing some of those grade bands. So at the elementary school, we would increase to a K1, 2, and a 3, 4, 5, instead of a K1, 2, 3, and 4, 5. That allows us to take 2 current people who are in those positions to help fill those 2 ILC positions, may or may not come from those elementary positions. And then to do the same at the middle and high school, reimagining how we fill positions right now by merging some of our positions so that the job is not just 6th grade or just 7th grade, but maybe 6th and part of 7th or 6th and part of high school. So that we are able to fill all of the needs across the district for specially designed instruction with the staff that we currently have. In the hopes that we do hire staff to refill those open positions, but going into the summertime knowing that they will be filled one way or the other.
Okay. Thank you. So do we need motions for these?
Well, I think, I
No?
mean, do you have a specific, I mean, a couple things, I can pull up the language if we would like to see the language. I think that you've looked at it, you've read it, voted on it earlier in past this year. There's a lot of language to it, but it has to be a position that you haven't been able to fill. It's something that the superintendent recommends. The ILC at Ringe Memorial School, I think is different than the other categories that we have anywhere. From the standpoint of what you talked about, the high level of needs, the number of adults that are, I don't want to say the word supervised, but that's why I use the word mobilized and work with and just kind of the orchestration of it all, along with the individualized instruction. So sometimes you can personalize instruction and group kids in different groups. This is all individual each and every time for all their coursework. And the toileting and things of that nature, that especially because they're younger, and elopement when you don't have certain skills or that running out of the room, or sometimes even attempting to run out of a building. We want to provide safety for them. So having teachers who are able to navigate that entire experience is important. And I think it's important for the board to know exactly what is current. Currently, we have the matrix of where people are on step-in lanes. And then if they are special education certified, so if they're a case manager, they would get an additional 1,500 on top of that per year. And then if they are in a situation where their requirements are to have actually be dual certified, so in this case, they would have to be dual certified. They do this position already gives you another 1,500, so a total of 3,000 above the base of whatever they are on the scale. And given the fact that it's been years since we've had that, honestly, last year they weren't filled. We had to piece things together last year completely. So we didn't have a teacher that was separate from other positions in that role. The year before it was difficult. It's been challenging for a long time. I would say this is a high need, critical need. And I would say that the board can choose what it would like to put forward. I would recommend 7,000 on top of the 3,000 that position already gets, for a total of 10,000 above the base. With the understanding that we would advertise for it tomorrow, and we see if we can get some people to apply and get into the or volunteer or what have you. And it still may result in us needing to go forward and have the board make some other decisions for filling that.
Could you put the language up that you said?
Sure.
Jen, do you know what a comparable position in Massachusetts would pay?
Oh, that is a great question. I don't, but I do know that it's substantially more than what New Hampshire is.
Okay.
But they also get taxed. Their
No,
income
no, I
tax.
understand that. I'm just wondering if someone up here has two salary positions in front of them, and one is in Ringe and one is in Ashburnham, or wherever school district is down there, how they would compare.
That's a great question and something I should definitely look into.
But the cost of housing down there is about 50% more. So it is a trade-off. I mean, it's a very deserving, they deserve a lot of salary. They deserve as much as we can give them, but it is much more expensive to live down there.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Someone lives up here. and
Yeah, but then they
the-
have to commute and they're gonna burn out their car and they've got their taxes and it's definitely.
Jen, I wanted to ask, has the district looked at contracting services?
Yep, and that's definitely a piece that we'll look at as well, but so to hire, here's another piece of this being a critical need. When you contract a special ed teacher, which is happening more and more often, I'm getting these more and more often. They'll work for 40 hours a week, and teaching is not a 40 hours a week job, and special ed is not a 40 hours a week job. Additionally, contracted services will not supervise paras in any way. They will not do any toileting. They will not do any physical interventions. So you have a 6-year-old who's just learning how to sit in a chair and needs to have somebody there's a lot of physical movement involved in that. Contracted services will not do those positions. So if I have a 2nd grader who we're working on reading and writing in a more typical fashion, that can absolutely be filled with contracted services. But we've interviewed some contracted services who have said, here's all the stipulations that I can't do, which then just would require us to have additional staff in there to do those pieces anyway.
Yeah.
And on top of that, contracted services are substantially more expensive because the contracted company is getting their cut. So when we have to go that route, and I'm all for that too, at this point to fill positions, they are going to cost the district substantially more than $70,000 a piece.
And you'll be looking again next year.
And you were going, yes.
In looking at what the costs are in a place like Ashburnham, which has, we've talked about this, taxes and all the driving and everything, but also, what are they paying for these positions in other districts? Like in Milford I know it's a lot, but
Yeah.
any information on that kind of thing would be appreciated.
I think generally our GREA contract is pretty comparable to our area as opposed to potentially Milford pays more. I don't know that there are other contracts that differentiate even as much as we do for special education.
Okay,
But I do know across the board, finding special educators is getting harder and harder, and contracting services is happening more and more.
and then the other question I just wanted to ask, the ILC positions, I believe you've said that they've allowed us to avoid out-of-district placements. Is that right? And
Yes.
what does that kind of amount to?
At the lowest cost for the students within this program that we would then need to add a district cost would start at $150, not counting transportation.
You said would start at
$150,000 a year,
150
and
plus
then
transportation.
transportation is another 50, 48.
And how many students is the ILC able to keep out of that
I
situation?
think we currently have 10 or 12 kids in between kindergarten through 5th grade-ish. My number could be wrong there.
The numbers that I recall through the years have been between 10 and 13. Yeah.
Okay, so do we need to take a motion? I think we did stuff in non-public, but do we need to take a?
Yeah,
motion and
yeah,
vote
yeah.
Here,
Yep.
All right, so there's two pieces on. One is to make these, the RING ILC positions a critical need category. And added to that will be an increase of $7,000 to hopefully retain these staff, and hire these staff. So I think, did you write down the language exactly that we had talked about previously?
Christine's got. Don't you have the language?
I don't have the language.
Sorry, I thought you did.
The motion would be to, I mean, we'll just use this language. The
Mhm.
motion would be to, to identify the RING ILC teacher positions as critical need due to the inability to hire and their qualifications required by law and the positions being unfilled. And to, in order to support or better support this position, the hiring of this position, the board would authorize blank
Okay.
money, yep, to additionally to what the position currently pays.
And the board did talk about this previously in non-public to get more information. And I believe we did agree to the $7,000 increase, so we can add that in. Does anybody want to make a motion to this effect?
I make a motion to do this.
Okay, second?
No, second.
Thank you, Charlie. Thank you, Judy. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Thank you. Passes 600.
The other piece I am asking the board at this time is to give us permission to transfer staff from building to building should we need to fill the positions that are currently filled in order to take all of the staff that we currently have and provide those services as currently required. Again, with the absolute hope that we are able to hire and move people back to the positions that they contracted in to begin with, unless they want to stay where we potentially have transferred them.
Okay, so this does get into contract, and by by the CBA, there is a time frame when people have gotten their contracts and agreed to their placements. Is that amenable to the legalities there?
So we need to notify people by July 1st if their assignments, correct wording, are being shifted. We can do it closer to, should we hire people, then closer to the school year, within 2 weeks before the school year, we can also shift people. But we would like to make decisions now with the hope that we then can shift people back, but tell people before July 1st. So that would be next week.
All right, is there a motion to authorize the superintendent to shift positions in buildings as allowed in the collective bargaining agreement to facilitate flexibility and supporting needs?
Make that motion if that motion will cover it, yeah.
Is there a different language that's needed?
So, clarification. Are you asking for a motion to be able to move people within schools or between schools?
Between,
So I think
I think both, but
the
within schools is-
JREA contract is gonna say that the board is gonna need to be able to approve of movement when they're between schools.
it's between schools.
Yeah.
Within schools, I don't think that we have to have.
That's correct.
Right, so it's
Yeah.
between schools.
Mhm.
Okay,
Because we're gonna need to act quickly, and given the needs of various positions, it may be required. Yeah.
All right, is there a
Is
second?
this unique to the RMS ILC staffing?
The critical need,
Critical need is.
yes.
This is
From
different.
school to school?
The, no,
No,
No.
this one's different. This is the separate one.
Separate. This is separate. This is about shifting between schools. We already took a vote in non-public that I think covers it very specifically because,
Mhm.
but I think that making a more general one, depending on the choices of people, would be helpful to have the board give authorization for us to be able to make that movement between a school if needed. Based upon need.
Okay.
So I'm trying to get it, is that a blanket one or is it specific to schools or?
That's a blanket one.
So we're authorizing the movement of any staff member from any school to any other school.
No. We're purely talking about special education. In the context of what Jen talked about regarding the shifts from a K1 2, 3. Can you describe it again?
so in the need to shift and re-merge across the district caseload distribution, there may need to be shifts from building to building to support the K1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and ILC positions. So depending on where qualified staff are, we may need to move someone from one building to another, which then may require us to move from a building to another,
Okay, so that's all the student services elementary.
and middle high.
I'm sorry.
And middle high. So dependent on where qualified staff are, if there's a qualified staff at the middle and high school that's the best fit for the, for instance, for the ILC, then that leaves a middle high school position open, that then we would potentially take an elementary person to the middle high school to then make all of those pieces fit.
Does this sentence work for a motion? Authorizing the superintendent to approve movement of qualified special services faculty, special education services faculty between schools as permitted by the JREA collective bargaining agreement effective immediately.
So the permission is effective immediately, is that what?
Yeah.
Is this a one situation thing or are we gonna make this? Ongoing? Should we specify that it's for this?
I think you would want to say for this
Yeah.
specific situation, this time frame.
Right. Yeah, 'cause it's-
And I think you also, I think it would be good to state that the board. Did you indicate because the board in the language, it says the board has to. Initiate the move, so. It's important, so I think that it's fine to have the board. Provide the superintendent with. The ability to understanding this, if you understand the position, and so you're going to utilize the superintendent to make this move. Should it need to occur? I think.
I'm not sure what you're asking.
You have it.
That I'm saying.
Yeah,
it's a
yeah,
superintendent.
authorize the superintendent to approve movement of qualified special education services faculty.
Between schools.
Services, teaching faculty,
Says teaching faculty.
yeah. Between schools as permitted by the JREA bargaining agreement effective June 30th, 2025 through August 23.
June 23rd, today.
Yeah, did I say 23rd?
Yeah,
Yep,
so
23rd,
June 23rd, 2025 through August 23rd, 2025 for
Yeah,
2
that
months.
that would cover, it, yep.
Okay, so Don made a motion. Do you still agree with this motion?
I do agree with that motion. yes.
Great. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Christine. Any more discussion? All right, I'll share this with Wendy and with Jen and with Ruben. And all approved?
Right.
Thank you. Any noes, any abstains? Great. Passes 6-0-0. Thank you for
Can I
that.
make a request?
Yeah.
When we fill these RMS, ILC positions? Can we identify the source of funds? Okay, thank you.
It is important to note that the funds are not raised extra from what is already there. It has to come from the existing budget.
Okay. Our next piece. Just want to get this link up here. Our next piece on the agenda, let me get it there. We're getting there, folks. We're doing it. Okay. We've gotten through some very heavy things tonight, you guys.
Unprecedented.
This is really incredible. Let's keep going. Sorry about that. That'll go off in a second. It's my kids telling me, you've been here long enough. Policies IJOC and IJOCR, school volunteers. Tell us more about that.
Sure. So we will need to bring some updated policy work there's a group of individuals in the SAU. Leslie and Clean has led some collaborative discussions around school volunteers. Been talking to administration, so forth, trying to make sure that we have a more streamlined process and that we are very clear with who is going to be in our schools, working with our students or the minors in our care. And so we have some policies that are okay, but maybe a little loose, not as clear as they should be. And we want to make certain that language is cleared up and we have a very structured process for making sure designated volunteers are identified and fingerprinted, background checked, and when they're allowed to be with individuals. So right now, the policy, for instance, as an example, says they need to be background checked. It doesn't say that they need to actually, they have, and our practice is they're not going to be alone with kids until we get those background checks back and that they've passed those background checks. That being said, the policy doesn't say that. So we'd like our policy to match what we want to be doing, what we think is best practice, so that there's no confusion for when parents come and say, I've got my fingerprints done, I should be able to go on that field trip the next day, So also it would specify timeframes people could become volunteers so that we have time for processing. So it's just a future discussion, hopefully done this summertime.
We can bring that to the next board
Yep.
meeting. These policies, IJOC is also ABA, and the procedures attached to it were last updated in 2018. So let's definitely take a look at it.
Yep.
So we'll bring that to the next policy meeting and we'll look at what the New Hampshire School Board Association has for any updates as well.
We've got some sample language too.
Perfect.
Yep.
And I'd just like to add in that throughout all of this discussions that we've been having, I would say over the past several years, especially this last year when we're talking about career and technical education, and of course that new building didn't go forward, but we were talking about trying to get community members in to do certain things like community education and adult education, and now we're talking about trying to make the schools more of a hub for the community, and we recognize that there are security issues around that. So I think this is really important to do, and hopefully as we do it, we also look at, trying to make them, the policies as volunteer friendly as possible. We want security, but we also want to make it, not a barrier to keep people.
Yeah, I think some of the processes that we want to do to make things more streamlined is to look at what we're already doing well. And for instance, at RMS, They have fingerprinting done during the open houses at a very specific time of the year that allows for us the time to have the time to get that information back, say yay or nay. And, then when all the field trip, and right now, in theory, field trips won't occur, but we'll figure that out. And I know that there have been some community fundraisers and so forth for those things. So when that happens, we're all set to go. That hasn't been necessarily the practice all the way through, but HR had indicated, hey, why don't we set up booths at these locations when parents are in the building and in large quantities, and we have a machine here. We have the digital fingerprinting machine here, so why not bring it over to those locations and have it done to speed the process up?
Yep.
Great.
So part of the procedure to make it more friendly.
And that fingerprinting just needs to be done once, right? But the volunteer form refreshed every year.
Once, again, I can't remember word for word the existing policy, but I think it's in there, but it's definitely in our sample revision would be that it would need to happen again if there's a break in service. So if they didn't volunteer the following year, yeah, then you'd have to do it again.
So if you've been fingerprinted elsewhere, can you look at a database like that? Right? No. Okay, so you do it over again.
No, I mean, even our student teachers, I think those kids are those young adults are fingerprinted multiple times to get into a school. Yeah. And it doesn't matter if it's one school, the next school, they have to keep on doing it.
Because we're not meeting as a policy committee in July, our next meeting is in August, which does give us time before the volunteer season to have 2 readings.
Yeah.
But it would actually be handier if you could actually give us those for our next July 21st meeting, that sample language. And I'll add in the New Hampshire School Board Association, just put it on the agenda. We don't have to wait for a policy committee to take a look at this.
So put it on the next agenda.
Yeah. Give us some language to work with.
Sure.
Cool. School of Excellence banners.
So this was something that I think we had individuals come from working together, Jaffrey Ringe, and they had talked to the school board about banners and hanging banners up for the School of Excellence in the communities. We do have a banner that we have been provided. David and his staff here have been placing that above most of the assemblies or in the background of the assemblies where we like graduations and so forth. And have, some of us have even worn our little buttons. They're bells that are on the buttons, not broomsticks. So just letting you know, they do look like broomsticks, but anyway, they're bells. So the School of Excellence banners, I think that we'd like to, our board can certainly continue to go forward and see what it would like to do where, talking to the community, talking to the select board or whoever would make the decision about where things can happen in the towns. I think we want to do it sooner than later. We're happy to get rolling on this as well and use some district funds. I don't think it's very expensive to do this in the whole scheme of things. We would have, I personally have thoughts of what could be done, similar to what we did during COVID with graduation and hanging banners. I do think it's beneficial to do this in various places within the community as for this school year and not just one big banner here, one big banner here. Obviously, we have to work with the towns to make sure that can take place, but to start those conversations and get that, mobilizing, find out where from the community, like this, to me, in my mindset, the next step is find out from the community where we would be allowed to put these, and that will help determine what style, size, type of banner we're looking for. We kind of know what it already is going to say. It might need to look different for different locations, but I didn't know if someone had done some of that already.
Ruben, I can speak to that a bit. I've been in touch with a representative of the group, Ali Vitello, over the last few meetings. Actually, if you check your email, I sent you an email.
Okay.
Just during this meeting with some designs. And so they've actually, volunteered to take the lead on a lot of that activity, which I've gladly accepted that offer.
Sure.
So if you check your email, you can even show them, they have some designs for some potential banners and yard signs, I believe, that said I could share with the school board here.
Is that something you'd like me to?
Yeah, you can bring it up.
Pull this off for a second.
Just to show the progress from the last few weeks. They are working on speaking with the towns on areas where they could be displayed. So they have some ideas. They've already taken those steps to do that. And I guess as a backup, right, there'd even be some if they're not able to gain that, there's options for displaying them on prominent areas of private property, right? So they've taken that. Once they have that approval, which I assume they'll get, they'll certainly then they'll move forward with purchasing, right? And as you said, in the grand scheme of things, it's not, I think we're talking like hundreds of dollars.
Yeah.
Not anything in the grand scheme of it. They do have, I think, options for funding some, if not all of it. I'm not sure. I won't speak for them, but personally, I think it would be good if, I think this is just good practice going forward to partner, with these organizations and have a productive relationship. So, certainly once they have those figures and the locations, we can talk about maybe funding that or even partnering with them to fund that. But I definitely am in support of, this is just good practice. Like we haven't worked with these sort of organizations before. So I think establishing an open line of communication. I don't know if anybody has feedback on any of these banners, but I'll intend to maybe next meeting, keep bringing this up and showing the progress here, because I think they have a meeting next week or something like that, and we could maybe have more information.
Friday. 1 o'clock.
Friday it is.
No, seriously.
Yes.
'Cause I'm part of that group. And Susan Sorrows had I thought was a cool idea, which is to get a little metallic sign to add on to the welcome to Jaffrey, welcome to Ringside. That's something we might say.
Yeah.
School of Excellence.
Yeah, like, hey, you drive by and someone's like
Yeah.
1997 soccer state champions or something like that. Yeah, that's interesting.
It's a random year that you just rolled out.
Oh, yeah, I don't know. You know what I mean?
I was actually like going through this, the gymnasium wondering 1997. No, did we?
Where is the meeting on Friday?
Zoom. Online.
Okay.
Anyways, so the purpose of this is just.
So these are samples.
Yeah.
And this is just update on what's,
Awesome.
they're still moving.
It has to be.
Susan came and spoke about it. They're still moving forward with it. I think within the next few weeks, there should be some more solid information.
So I thought you'd sent me something.
Yes, the newsletter.
Yeah, I got the
This is
newsletter.
just a subcommittee of 4.
That's right, because you guys split into groups.
Yeah.
That's cool. Really cool.
The only suggestion, I mean, I'm sure that there, other people would have other suggestions, but just right off the top of my head, the School of Excellence in New Hampshire does have a symbol that it uses. And so having that symbol along with it would be a good idea. Whether it's faded in the background, whether it's in a corner somewhere, things like that.
A broom?
The broom, yes. The bell.
I have a question too.
Yeah.
But actually, this one's a good one to have up. Is it just the high school that received the award?
It is the high
Technically?
school. It is the high school. Yep. The School of Excellence for the middle school in New Hampshire was Oyster River this year.
Right?
Yep.
So it would be good.
And we entered the high school because they wouldn't allow us to enter both.
Yeah, no, I understood, but on something like this example, it
Yep.
would be Conant High School, not middle high school.
Well, the school is Conant Middle High
I
School,
know,
but what would be High School of Excellence.
right?
Yeah. To your point, it might be confusing.
My 2 cents on these, and what are you wanting people to see? Are you wanting to see Conant, or are you wanting to see School of Excellence? Because black is hard to read from afar when you're driving. The next one, you see Conant, you don't see School of Excellence, and the next one, Conant is big, School of Excellence is small. So what's the focus? What do you want people to pull out of it? Because when you're driving, you're not gonna be able to pick up all of that. So what is your brain gonna pick up the biggest thing?
Jen, I think you're absolutely right.
Mhm.
I mean, when it should stand out what we want to stand out. Right? But this is an initial shot, so.
No, it's,
That's my favorite.
Yeah.
I agree.
Orange is gonna bring you right to its Conant.
School of Excellence, Conant High School, Urban Shades.
And that's such a cute Oreo, you know, he was so proud of himself, so, yeah, I think that's best.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chris and John, for bringing.
Yeah, so I'll provide that feedback
Awesome.
to the group of.
and I agree that Oriole does look proud.
Doesn't he?
Yeah,
He's
yeah.
just like-
I was looking at the eyes, oh, okay, okay.
Like, you got it going on, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, on to public comments number 2. So put up the policy. That.
Allie Marr from Ringe, New Hampshire. And I actually have 2 separate comments. The first one, I just want to say thank you to all of you for being willing to use that critical need language from the CBA. There was a reason why we worked really hard to reopen negotiations and get that in there. And it's great to see it being used for such a valuable program. As a teacher at RMS, I get to see firsthand every day the incredible things that are happening in there. And it would be amazing to see that program continue to build and have a little bit more continuity. And hopefully that can happen with that. And the second part is just something that actually I think, forgetting if it was Christine, I think you brought it up earlier, mentioning that you missed Jen's special presentation in person last time. And actually I was just speaking with another member of the community who asked if there's any way that we could get on the website as like a separate section for videos where we'd actually just say special presentations, so that people can quickly find just like targeted videos of those presentations, because I think Christine's point that they should be seen by as many people as possible would be really, really beneficial.
Yes, Ruben, is there? This is
There-
such
it
a
is-
new idea.
It is in the works. It is in the works.
Nice.
Awesome. Thank you.
We had to end the year off. It has been discussed and it's in the plans. Yeah, they just gotta be edited.
Wait a minute, we're good. All right, any other public comments? Any online? All right. There was a board matter. I can't remember it right now.
You might have a separate one, but I know that we brought it up last time, JRSSA negotiations, board members interested in doing that. They would like to begin this summer if possible. To avoid a busy fall. I think it would probably continue into the fall a little bit, but you could get started in theory in July. We'd have to certainly go back and forth and find out how that would work and get a first date, but we would want at least a couple people from the board, no more than 3, who would be interested in doing that. We can set up a first meeting, which would be a scheduling meeting, and then go from there.
I would be happy to be involved. I'm kicking myself as I say it, but this is such a worthy group. And just to be clear, I did have a daughter who was part of this group, but she no longer works for the school district. So it's a very important group, and I'd be happy to be part of it.
Yeah, I would donate to.
Anyone else?
Maybe we can get Sandy. She was amazing at negotiations last time.
Oh, I think we should. Let's put her down.
Well, let's ask her.
Hey, she's not here, so she deserves.
Fair game.
She has
If
a
you
unique
refuse-
perspective.
If you refuse the vote.
Yeah.
And so it'll be, we'll ask Sandy, but John, you'll be a backup.
I'll be back up with Sandy and do it.
All right. I will reach out. Get things rolling.
Perfect. All right. Any other board matters somebody else can think of?
We did have a wellness committee meeting since the last. I'll cover it briefly. First of all, I know we have a new member, so now you're on the list. You'll be invited to the next,
Okay.
next meeting.
Great.
Certainly. So, I let Heather Lindstad know. She's chairing that, so she has the updated list. So that wasn't her fault. It was our fault for not letting her know. I guess briefly, we discussed some of the wellness, food service issues, that we discussed in a few of the meetings, and, I think some of the progress that's been made, specifically maybe in the middle school and the continued focus on the middle school. I know that was a topic of discussion. It seems there's been some progress made there and some recognition on behalf of the food service company, that there need to be some action taken. So they're definitely working with the district there. Another thing that we discussed, which will be an item for the fall, maybe is possibly doing like a 5K road race in the fall, possibly like around the Thanksgiving time frame. I'm not sure, but I think we're going to kind of pencil that in on the calendar and address that at the first meeting when we return, in August or whenever our next meeting is. So I think those are the major updates.
Was there a facilities meeting? Yes.
There was a facilities walkthrough today. We did not have a meeting last week, but there was a walkthrough which I got to participate in briefly, about an hour. Over at Stafford Grade School, but the facilities staff, including Carrie and Ruben, spend much of the day going through the middle high school and the grade school, looking at all of the issues relating to how the HVAC system is working pretty well, right? I mean, there's some spots, but it's working pretty well, but also windows and doors and floors. It was a pretty complete review by the staff.
Mhm.
And it was not only a review, but somewhat of a retreat in the sense that it was a real chance for the maintenance staff to work closely with Carrie and Ruben on, what the priorities are.
Yeah, just for the record, they like Carrie better. Come into the SAU and they say hello and they can go right into the business. Shut the door, hang out. Leave me alone. More easily accessible. I think the comment was, yeah, this is the fastest we have ever gotten X, Y, or Z done,
Were there any other committee meetings that happened recently? Okay, and are we expecting another information session coming up of a group?
Yes. I have to look back in amendments as to what it would be, but I know that we have a data presentation coming up soon.
That'd be nice. Good. All right, we will take a motion to adjourn. Oh, you guys don't want to go. Well, this is sweet.
That would be too, yes,
I bet that.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Judy. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstained? Thank you. Motion passes 6-0.